Hey everyone, welcome back to Tech Backstage. Eddie, I'm not seeing your video. I'm not sure why, but good to have you all with us today. Actually, I think he's frozen. I'm Tulio Sergusa with Tech Backstage, and our guest today is Bhushan Heda, who's with Emeritus. Welcome to the show. It's good to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me here.
So we're talking about interesting conversation today about technology and learning. But before we get into it, let's get to know you a little bit. If you could tell us a little bit about who you are, give us a little bit about you, and tell us about Emeritus, and then let's go into continuous learning. Not a nice thing to have, but a must-have. Let's see what we can learn today.
First of all, thank you for having me here, Tulio. Uh, I am a newly minted CTO at Emeritus. So, new in the role for about last 4 months. Prior to that, I've done a whole bunch of tech leadership. I worked at Intuit, at Google, at eBay. So last 2 decades has been predominantly working at large companies. Uh, Lots of customer facing roles, lots of like customer obsession as part of the roles. But prior to that, I did about 10 years of startups. So I would say that this is my part of the journey where I'm trying to move from startups to large company and to get back into the startup land. Uh, and so as I was trying to do the transition, the one thing that was important for me was doing something that's very mission oriented. And I think like education, like most of us, is something that's very easy to connect with and something that we all feel very passionately about. So that's what got me to Emeritus.
So tell us a little bit about Emeritus. What is it all about? It's a nonprofit, so
So
tell us what.
Emeritus is for profit. It's a venture funded company. We are in the business of professional upskilling. So it's a platform. We partner with a ton of truly top notch universities across the world. So we partner with about like 6 7 universities worldwide, the likes of Harvard, Columbia, Berkeley, Tuck. But if you go to Europe, you actually have Imperial, London School of Business, INSEAD in France, uh, uh, IPADE in Mexico. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. IITs and IIMs in India. So it's a pretty broad spectrum of high quality institutes which we partner with. And we create the content. We partner with them in identifying which are the areas of interest from a professional upskilling perspective, partner to create the content. We spread the courses and the learning across 80 different countries worldwide.
Hmm.
And we do this for individual professionals, but we also do it for enterprises. And so companies like Adobe are a great example of our enterprise clients. And there it's more about companies have a strategy of where they want to take their business. And this is about how do you accelerate that strategy by investing in your people. And not just are you able to move on your strategy, but you're also able to uh, develop your people, grow them, and retain them, and essentially have them as happier workforce.
Now, you guys partner with a lot of different universities as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the universities that we partner with, I would say that it's a great symbiotic relationship, right? Because on one side, we essentially play the role of being the platform player for them. So it's about we've invested about 12 years in the art of creating high quality education, creating courses which actually have very high engagement. So one of the metrics that we measure ourselves by is the percentage of learners who actually complete the course. So for us, that number is north of 85% of the learners who start the course complete the course. Uh, if you contrast that with like the traditional MOOCs like Coursera, that number is like a subset of 10%. So smaller than 10%. So it's really creating the high quality, high engagement content, partner with the faculty, uh, have instructors who would actually be grading you on assignments and stuff like that. So I feel like that's what we do. in partnership with the universities, so that universities would feel great about being able to lend their name on the certificate that's issued from the universities.
Hmm. So look, this kind of role is like being on a mission, right? Why did you choose to? You just been here 4 months. Why did you choose Emeritus? What was sort of the thing that attracted you there? Is there a particular mission that's close to your heart as it relates to why you chose to join them?
So I've been working for a long time, and I think that as you work longer and longer, you probably strive for mission more and more. Uh, I've been part of great businesses where the mission was very central. So, for example, when I worked at eBay, it was about how do you spread economic democracy.
Hmm.
I remember in 2008 working with like meeting sellers who had lost their jobs. They had no way to like get to an employment. They started selling on eBay, and they went from selling from their homes to their garage to getting a small warehouse to a large warehouse, right? And I would say that it's very fulfilling as, I would say, a tech professional to work on something that really connects to the mission. Uh, I'll say I had a very similar experience working at Intuit. Intuit's goal is about like how do you spread the prosperity across the world, and it's whether it's consumers or whether it's small businesses. For both of them, I feel like it was about how do you actually get more money in the pocket? How do you actually save them time? Uh, Half the small businesses fail within 5 years. It's a pretty bad stat. Like, or 50% of the people don't have $2,000 for an emergency as a consumer. And so I felt that every time there was a mission that did something good for people, I felt like that energized me a lot. So as I was trying to transition into the startup world, I also wanted to like find something that was going to appeal to me. And so I feel like education to me is at the core of everything that we do. Uh, I don't know, actually, if you have heard of Gini Index.
Hmm.
Maybe it's a deviation, but I think it's probably worth calling out. So Gini index, it's called Gini coefficient, that measures the inequality in the world. So whether you speak of at a country level or a continent level, uh, how much disparity is there in the population, right? And so if everybody was making the same exact money, then it would be zero. If one person was making all the money, everybody else is making no money, the index would be 1. Since I would say that since like World War II till now, the Gini index has been going up, which means the disparity is increasing more and more.
Hmm.
And in the last 20 years, it's even accelerated, right? And the countries where we actually see it go uh, bend the curve are the countries that are investing in education. So I feel like this is a pretty core part of the mission. You can have a lot of innovation in the world, but it's about how do you actually make workers ready for it, uh, and how do you bring all of that innovation in tech through education to the people, where they are able to bring it back to their economy.
So let's talk about the target. Who's Emeritus targeting? Like, who are your customers, your clients? Tell us a little bit about that, because I mean, education is really important, especially now. It seems as though the gap is growing. So instead of making progress, we seem to be going in the opposite direction. So who's your target, and how can we improve the level of education that people have access to?
So I'll say the target is all the professionals worldwide. Uh, if you were to think of, if I were to think of my dad's generation, uh, he did one job his entire life. He did one profession his entire life. If I were to think of my generation, uh, I probably went through 8 career transitions as I've grown in my career, right? And every one of the transition has involved learning at some level. I think as we go forward, learning is going to become a lot more continuous process, right? I think like it's almost like you want to think of learning as a subscription, where it's not I did my college and I graduated, or I did my college and at some point I picked a few courses and learned, and I managed a transition. But I actually feel that it's more uh, a mindset of saying that I'm constantly going to keep learning. So yeah, I think it may sound too broad, but I do feel that for most areas, there's a fair bit of disruption that's actually happening. And the way for professionals to like stay on top of their game is through continuous education.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely an important cause. I mean, we had a comment from someone on the audience saying this is a great topic, and very much so. So let's just kind of look at the bigger picture a little bit. We see how Emeritus is helping organizations and companies learn how to adapt continuous learning. Where else do you think there's opportunity? Is there some grassroots things that people can do even at the entry levels of school in elementary, middle school, high school to plant the seed for continuous learning? Is there just not enough effort going on there about that? What's your thoughts around that?
I think education is the area where you are and you will see a ton of innovation, right? So there's first of all, a lot of education that's happening. Um, like I can say that I have a son who's 19-year-old and he just moved to college, but he supplemented a lot of his education through Khan Academy. And it's not unusual to like find people across the world who actually are supplementing their own education throughout by doing that, right? There's a lot of, uh, let's say, even online education that's available. Uh, I believe like there's some experiments happening in Sweden where there's robots who actually would try to teach you, or if you are at home and you are physically incapable of getting to a classroom, you could actually have your surrogate be in the classroom so that you actually get the classroom experience from your bed. So I think the amount of innovation that you're seeing happening in education is massive. Second thing is, if we think of XR, AR, VR, uh, there's two areas which are like the most compelling use cases for AR and VR. One of them is gaming, of course, but the other one is education. So I think there's a lot that's happening. There's a lot that's actually happening within the universities. They are definitely upskilling themselves as well. So yeah.
I'm going to jump in here. Sorry,
Welcome back,
guys.
Rudy.
Yeah, sorry. My router decided that it's still a holiday. Apparently, like the intro video started playing and it just froze. So, but I'm glad I made it back for this part of the discussion because this is the stuff that I'm really passionate about. In Bhushan, you've touched on some really important points right now, right? Because tech is always evolving, like every single day, and there's been a lot of buzzwords lately being thrown around. A lot of talk about the metaverse and a lot of talk about Web3. We still hear a lot about AI and machine learning and how AI robots are becoming sentient and they're hiring lawyers to represent themselves. But I think a lot of that actually ends up. I think it ends up kind of it ends up in the news more than the actual work that's being done, right? It's buzzwords, it's hype, and yeah, maybe it's exciting for people to talk about, but I think it ends up kind of hiding the actual work that's being done. And so I think you touched on a really important point right now, AR VR, and the future of learning. And technology right now is, especially in education, think about the pandemic and how everybody had to go from classroom learning to learning in Zoom like almost overnight, right? And so, ed tech right now is there's so much innovation happening. How do you at Emeritus, how are you guys taking a look at the current landscape of technology, and how are you looking at the future of tech? And how are you using that to guide your roadmap, and what are some of the things that you're excited about? Like you said, AR VR. Are you guys planning on using AR VR at Emeritus, maybe virtual classrooms? Tell us a little bit about that.
Um, there's a lot of areas for innovation. So I may just like step back a little bit, right? So innovation starts from all the way from identifying the right kind of courses that actually have an appeal to the professionals out there, right? And so there's mining that you can do in terms of data, in terms of searches, trying to like do the right kind of matching of what would be the right kind of courses that I could actually offer. It's also about being smart about when you actually have a learner come to you, being able to understand like what would their needs be, what would their progression be, what would be the right kind of courses that they could take. And it's not just about probably in the context of that one particular course they're trying to do, but it's where they're trying to take the career, right? We spend a fair bit of our energy in terms of making sure that learners get a great experience and are able to understand whether the course that they've done is really helping them change the career or not. And so taking all of that data to then bring it to bear for prospective learners, I feel is something very important. Then
Very
there's
cool.
aspect of let me maybe just touch on a couple of things here.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So the other thing is when the learning experience is happening today, I would say that most courses are reasonably static, right? Like you go in, you have 8, 10 topics, and you're going to go through the topics. You'll have topical assignments, and you go through them. But I think you can imagine a future where, first of all, as students are going through the topics, you're trying to understand, are there areas that appeal to them more or they're not appealing? Are there areas where students are finding them to be difficult, and do they need some hand holding so that they actually can get through those difficult areas better? And then could you even like think of a completely adaptive kind of a curriculum where the curriculum is not a straight line as defined, but essentially it can take the direction of where it makes more sense for you. So, and then the last one that was closer to what you're saying about could you actually offer a more immersive experience? Because today, even though we are very async in nature, by async, I mean, we'll say have 300 students of the course. Most of them are working at separate time in their own time, but they are still working in a cohort. That means they're going to start a particular chapter in this week and they'll complete the same week. But there's a immense opportunity for interaction that could actually happen. And could you potentially give them the feel that they're part of the same classroom and there's the same liveliness of the conversation which is there? So I think like those are the areas where we would love to push the bar on further.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the idea that you're talking about too, is, making sure that courses are relevant and making sure that, that your users are feeling like the courses that they're taking are adding value to their career, right? And you talked a lot about data right now, and data right now is, I think it's in the forefront of everybody's mind, right? Because with data, you can tell a story, right? And if you can sit down and take a look at, hey, this, we have users and they're taking this course, and you can say, oh, look, we have a drop off right here, 65% of the way through the course. What's happening right here? That's, that our users are disengaging. You're able to actually look at that and improve, improve your courses and improve the user experience. And so I think data right now is huge. Do you guys, and again, if we can't talk about any of this, it's fine, but do you guys, how do you guys handle data? Do you have a lot of data pipelines? Are you using, like, do you have your own custom analytics built in? Like, how do you guys measure the user experience and user satisfaction?
Yeah, data is huge for us. We do actually have all of the data flowing into our data warehouse, for lack of better words. So, and this could be coming either from the students on our platform, or if we use a third-party platform, it would come from multiple of these. But the idea is that the data is going to flow into our system where we are able to get the signals, and we are able to then course correct based on what we are able to see there. We are on Google Cloud when it comes to our analytics stack. Uh, we use BigQuery, and I feel like it's a pretty good streaming architecture
Oh
that
yeah.
we have in place. So uh, that's one of the areas where I feel like super good about.
Yeah, no, I love GCP, and it's funny because even when I find myself, even when you build on other cloud platforms, like when you're working on with enterprise, sometimes they're like, oh hey, we want to use Azure, right? But almost always Google gets implemented somehow because all of the data APIs that they have. BigQuery is a great example, and I love some of the actual like open source data sets that they provide to you, and you can just go in and query it right there, and it's just like SQL, right? But I also, just like you're talking about, using Data Studio, and I think GCP has some like, I think their cloud offering right now has some really strong features. But on top of that, it's like it's almost impossible not to build a project nowadays without some sort of Google API making its way into the project, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think about the Maps one all the time too, because if you think about, and especially just what they did with Google Maps, right? Like, mapping the entire world and how they talked about, initially, like, anyways, we could get into the data and the APIs all day, but I think you're right. I think GCP and Data Studio and using BigQuery right now I think that's really powerful stuff for sure.
So
I would maybe, if I were to speak of something tangential but related here, um, we always see the outside of what learners experience.
Mm-hmm.
But from a tech perspective, the other piece of what it takes to make it happen and for it to be a great experience is an equally important part. So,
Yeah.
for example, like we are all Netflix users and we
Yeah.
all watch the Netflix movies and the next recommendation and stuff like that. But there's a lot of sausage making in terms of how do I create the movies. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I remember like listening to one of the podcasts from Netflix about how much they're trying to invest in terms of just making that process better. And I would
Mm-hmm.
say we are in a very similar boat. I would say roughly a third of our organization is actually effort is being spent towards creating the great learning experiences.
mm,
And so as much as we see the world from outside about what's to be done, but I think like there's probably a bigger world of how you make that happen in a great way, where our folks internally have like all the great insights to be able to create the best products, and as they're creating them, they actually have the best tools to be able to create that. So something that I think like we don't talk about a whole lot, but I feel like that's equally important too.
it's interesting. I want to see if we can fast forward a little bit to the future, and it reminds me of this solution and one of my past companies we had created where the tablets were somewhat intuitive. They learned at what pace the student went. This was actually for not for college level students, but it learned the pace in which the student learned and it adapted it based on the pace. But there was always a person, a teacher, that was involved with the process. So it was never left to the machine to figure it all out. There was always the human element that interacted with it, that provided the intrinsic intelligence that sometimes the machines don't really fine tune very well. So I'm curious about, we talked about AR, VR, the metaverse, the future, and I can't help but think like at some point, right now, there's the dangers of going to public school, which we all know, unfortunately, but there's also people who are adamantly against certain things like vaccination. So they're limited in terms of their ability to participate in public schools. And I'm just wondering if in the future, because of the democratization of education, of platforms like this, where it just opens up a whole new universe where you could have the option to virtually learn from home or at your pace or at a pace that aligns with how you learn. So what's going to be needed to get there? I mean, this is major technology investments that are going to be required to get there. In your opinion, is Emeritus sort of going in this direction? And what is it going to take to build a technology to support that potential future?
So to a large extent, what we do is very similar, Tulio, to what you're saying. Uh, we make the courses from the top tier universities accessible to learners in 80 different countries. And so very proud about supporting about 270,000 students annually who
Wow.
take benefit of the courses. It's at a massive scale. Now, that said, there's always way more opportunity for the future. And so I think you touched on some of the aspects of it. So today, what happens is if you are a student and you take a course, along with the course, there's assignments, there's quizzes, there's maybe even a written assignment that you'll have. In our case, it's a very personalized system where we would have an instructor actually verify your assignments and give you feedback. Of course, the objective stuff is done by the machine, but the qualitative stuff is something that we actually have someone doing it. Where I think we have a lot more opportunity going forward is, first of all, the courses are straight line. There's a fixed curriculum. We could do a better job in terms of when you take a course, you actually have certain learning goals. So let's say if I'm trying to do a data analytics course, then I'm trying to understand how should I do modeling. I'm trying to understand whether how should I be doing deployment or Python. So I think on multiple dimensions, you're trying to learn a particular curriculum, and we could do a better job in terms of like trying to tell you how you're tracking with your learning goals. We can tell you how the rest of the class is tracking, and we can inspire you to be the better version of yourself. I think that's basically the goal of what we are trying to do. And again, I feel like when you come into the course, I think today there's some level of community, but there's definitely an opportunity for us to like put the community element on steroids. And so for me, there's like two critical aspects as we are trying to take the learning innovation. One is trying to make sure that you are getting clarity from your learning progression perspective and inspired to do the best. And the second thing is get the same level of benefit of the community participation that you would get in a physical classroom. And those are huge, but I feel doable over time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you
amazing.
Yeah, you touched on something earlier too, and I kind of want to circle back to this too, because you talked about how you integrate with a lot of top universities, right? When my internet was cutting in and out, but I came in for that part. But I think another thing that's really important to talk about for the future is integrations and how you integrate with those universities, because we're moving towards a services oriented tech landscape where everybody kind of, like we have our payment provider and we have our accounting software and we all, we have our email and like it can all, and our invoicing, and it can all, it can all link up together. But at Emeritus, do you see that kind of same landscape as well, where you're providing kind of like the core learning product and you're able to actually ship that out to these different universities and integrate it with their existing platforms?
It's slightly different. It's more around, it's the universities that have the great content.
Okay.
They have the top faculty, they've got the great content. We partner with them in terms of being able to bring that content and bring it to students worldwide. And so
Got it.
what we actually have is a mechanism by which we create the best courses possible from there, and then be able to take it to a very wide distributed audience, and then provide the high touch experience to the students as they are taking the courses. And so, yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So you guys are focused on the user experience, and then you're partnering with universities to bring great content to your platform.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, there's so much potential for that
Yeah.
too. Imagine making a Harvard level education available to just about anyone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the ultimate. Ultimately, that's what you can make possible with this kind of tech. Now we're coming up on time. We're running out of time, but what's the platform kind of investment to make this sort of thing happen? It seems as though you guys are growing. Demand is growing. In an industry right now, we've seen a lot of contraction in the tech space right now. So it's great to hear of organizations that their demand is growing. So what do you see as your major challenges in the coming years?
So first of all, given where the market is going, one of the important goals for us is not just having growth, but having growth that's a profitable growth, which means that you're going to pay a lot more attention to the bottom line and trying to do things in a much more efficient manner. So to put these things in perspective, last year we must have added 1,000 people to the company as we grew 2x in terms of our top line. Now, as we expect to grow 10x over, let's say, the next 5 years, I don't think we could keep adding people at the same pace. So essentially, this is where tech becomes a lot more relevant. How do you build things at scale? How are you and I think it helps from both perspectives. It helps from being able to scale seamlessly, but it also actually helps in terms of providing a much higher quality experience to the users as well, right? Think of Amazon, for example. If they do a better job in terms of trying to see how shipping is going to happen and from a much more optimized routing perspective, on one side you actually get the scales of being able to do it well, but on the other side, the actual recipients receive their packages probably in much more higher consistency. So that would be one area. The other area that's very close to my heart, and I feel like that's always important, is really how do you focus on the end user NPS? In our case, our end users are multiple, right? Of course, the learners who are learning the courses, making sure that they get a great experience. It's our university partners, making sure that they actually have a great experience, because they are also able to see a lot more of the trends of what's going on and be able to leverage that. It's also enterprises. As we work with corporations, being able to help them move toward their goals in terms of their strategic priorities, in terms of people development and retention. So I think and last but not least, our internal users as well. Like I mentioned, making sure internal users have a great experience is very important. So to me, there's a focus on systems and automation, and there's a focus on the end user experience. And for both of them, I feel it's really about the rigor of understanding what are the most impactful things and making them real.
Very nice. Well, we're up on time. It's been great to have you with us. Thanks for sharing all these insights. We really appreciate it, and we wish you guys continued success and success for you as well, having just joined 4 months ago. Stay with us as we go off the air in just a second. So come back on Friday. We have another show this Friday at 1:15 p.m. Central, 11:15 a.m. Pacific. We're going to be talking with PagerDuty. Uptime is money. That's their slogan. So come learn everything you can about why it's important for digital operations to help your business running and always on. We'll come back this Friday as we talk with our guest, Den. And we just started the podcast. It was a couple of months now, Eddie, Tech Backstage.
Yeah, I mean, we're I think Bhushan is episode 8 or something like that. So we're just getting started. Yeah.
So we're just getting started. We're now at 2 shows a week, but we plan to be on every day except Monday, because you have to have lunch at least one day a week, right? So stay tuned, guys. More to come. Thanks for joining us. See you again.
Thanks, Bhushan.
Thank you so much.
Bye.